A hijab is a veil that covers the head and chest, which is particularly worn by Muslim women in the presence of adult males outside of their immediate family. It can further refer to any head, face, or body covering worn by Muslim women that conforms to a certain standard of modesty. Hijab can also be used to refer to the seclusion of women from men in the public sphere, or it may embody a metaphysical dimension. Al-hijab refers to the veil which separates man of the world from God. Most often, it is worn by Muslim women as a symbol of modesty and privacy. According to the Encyclopedia of Islam and Muslim World, modesty in the Quran concerns both men's and women's gaze, gait, garments, and genitalia. The Quran admonishes Muslim women to dress modestly. Some Islamic legal systems define this type of modest dressing as covering everything except the face, elbows, and knees. These guidelines are found in texts of fiqh and hadith developed after the revelation of the Quran but, according to some, are derived from the verses referencing hijab in the Quran. Some believe that the Quran itself does not mandate that women wear hijab. The term hijab in Arabic literally means a screen, a curtain, and is used in the Quran to refer to a partition. The Quran tells the male believers to talk to the wives of Muhammad behind a curtain. This curtain was the responsibility of the men and not the wives of Muhammad. This leads some to claim that the mandate of the Quran to wear hijab applies to the wives of Muhammad, not women generally. Laws mandating hijab have been passed in a number of countries. Other countries have passed laws banning some or all types of hijab in public or in specific places. Women in other parts of the world also experience unofficial pressure to wear or not wear hijab in general, or in its certain forms, including physical attacks. In Islamic scripture, the Quran instructs both Muslim men and women to dress in a modest way, but it does not insist on covering the head. Tell the believing men to lower the gaze and be modest. The clearest verse on the requirement of the hijab is Surah 24:30-31, asking women to draw the khimar over the bosoms, and say to the believing women that they should lower the gaze and guard the modesty, that they should not display the beauty and ornaments, except what appear thereof, that they should draw the khimar over the breasts and not display the beauty except to the husband, the fathers, the husband's fathers, the sons, the husband's sons, the brothers of the brother's sons, or the sister's sons, or the women, or the slaves whom the right hands possess, or male servants free of physical needs, or small children who have no sense of the shame of sex, and that they should not strike the feet in order to draw attention to the hidden ornaments. In the following verse, the wives of Muhammad are asked to wear clothes as a measure to distinguish themselves from others, so that they are not harassed. Surah 33-59 reads, "Those who harass believing men and believing women undeservedly bear a calumny and a grievous sin. O Prophet, enjoin your wives, your daughters, and the wives of true believers that they should cast their outer garments over the persons. That is most convenient, that they may be distinguished and not be harassed." Alternative views. Some Muslims take a relativist approach to hijab. They believe that the commandment to maintain modesty must be interpreted with regard to the surrounding society. What is considered modest or daring in one society might not be considered so in another. It is important, they say, for believers to wear clothing that communicates modesty and reserve, along with scriptural arguments. Layla Ahmed argues that head covering should not be compulsory in Islam because the veil predates the revelation of the Quran. Head covering was introduced into Arabia long before Muhammad, primarily through Arab contacts with Syria and Iran, where the hijab was a sign of social status. After all, only a woman who need not work in the fields could afford to remain secluded and veil. Ahmed argues for a more liberal approach to hijab. Among her arguments is that while some Quranic verses enjoin women in general to draw the jilbabs around them to be recognized as believers and so that no harm will come to them, and guard the private parts, and drape down ghima over the breasts, they urge modesty. The word ghima refers to a piece of cloth that covers the head, or headscarf, while the term hijab was originally anything that was used to conceal. It became used to refer to concealing garments worn by women outside the house, specifically the headscarf or ghima. Other verses to mention separation of men and women. Abide still in your homes and make not a dazzling display like that of the former times of ignorance. And when ye ask of them anything, ask it of them from behind a curtain. According to at least 3 authors, the stipulations of the hijab were originally meant only for Muhammad's wives, and were intended to maintain their inviolability. This was because Muhammad conducted all religious and civic affairs in the mosque adjacent to his home. People were constantly coming in and out of this compound at all hours of the day. When delegations from other tribes came to speak with Prophet Muhammad, they would set up the tents for days at a time inside the open courtyard, just a few feet away from the apartments in which Prophet Muhammad's wives slept, and new emigrants who arrived in Yathrib would often stay within the mosque's walls until they could find suitable homes. According to Ahmed, by instituting seclusion, Prophet Muhammad was creating a distance between his wives and this thronging community on the doorstep. They argue that the term darabat al-hijab was used synonymously and interchangeably with becoming Prophet Muhammad's wife, and that during Muhammad's life, no other Muslim woman wore the hijab. Aslan suggests that Muslim women started to wear the hijab to emulate Muhammad's wives, who are revered as mothers of the believers in Islam, and states there was no tradition of veiling until around 627 CE in the Muslim community. Another interpretation differing from the traditional states that a veil is not compulsory in front of blind men and men lacking physical desire. Hadith. The Arabic word jilbab is translated as cloak in the following passage. Contemporary Salafis insist that the jilbab worn today is the same garment mentioned in the Quran and the Hadith. Other translators have chosen to use less specific terms. Narrated Anas ibn Malik, I know the hijab more than anybody else. Ubay ibn Ka'b used to ask me about it. Allah's apostle became the bridegroom of Zainab bint Jahsh, whom he married at Medina. After the sun had risen high in the sky, the Prophet invited the people to a meal. Allah's apostle remained sitting and some people remained sitting with him after the other guests had left. Then Allah's apostle got up and went away, and I too followed him till he reached the door of Aisha's room. Then he thought that the people must have left the place by then, so he returned and I also returned with him. Behold, the people were still sitting at the places. So he went back again for the second time, and I went along with him too. When we reached the door of Aisha's room, he returned and I also returned with him to see that the people had left. Thereupon the Prophet hung a curtain between me and him, and a verse regarding the order for hijab was revealed. Sahih al-Bukhari 765-375, Sahih Muslim 8-3334. Narrated Salama Hind bint Abi Umayyah al-Mu'minin, when the verse that they should cast their outer garments over their persons was revealed, the women of Ansar came out as if they had crows hanging down over the heads by wearing outer garments. 32-4090. Abu Dawood classed this hadith as authentic. Narrated Safiya bint Shaiba, Aisha used to say, when they should draw the veils over the necks and bosoms was revealed, cut the waist sheets at the edges and covered the faces with the cut pieces. Sahih al-Bukhari, 660-282, 32-4091. Dress code required by hijab. Traditionally, Muslims have recognized many different forms of clothing as satisfying the demands of hijab. Debate focused on how much of the male or female body should be covered. Different scholars adopted different interpretations of the original texts. Detailed scholarly attention has focused on prescribing female dress in conformity with hijab. The four major Sunni schools of thought hold that the entire body of the woman, except her face and hands, though a few clerics say face, hands, must be covered during prayer in public settings. There are those who allow the feet to be uncovered as well as the hands and face. It is recommended that women wear clothing that is not form-fitting to the body, either modest forms of Western clothing, or the more traditional jilbab, a high-necked, loose robe that covers the arms and legs. A khimar or shayla, a scarf or cowl that covers all but the face, is also worn in many different styles. Some scholars encourage covering the face, while some follow the opinion that it is only not obligatory to cover the face and the hands but mustahab. Other scholars oppose face covering, particularly in the West where the woman may draw more attention as a result. These garments are very different in cut from most of the traditional forms of hijab, and they are worn worldwide by Muslims. Many Muslim scholars believe that it is a basic requirement of Islamic law that women keep the hair and bodies covered in the presence of people of the opposite sex other than close family members. These include the Iraqi Shia Marja Ali al-Sistani, the Sunni Permanent Committee for Islamic Research and issuing fatwas in Saudi Arabia, and others. According to some interpretations, these requirements extend to non-Muslim women as well. Some believers go so far as to specify exactly which areas of the body must be covered. In some cases, this is everything but the eyes, but most require that women cover everything but the face and hands. In nearly all Muslim cultures, young girls are not required to wear a hijab. There is not a single agreed age when a woman should begin wearing a hijab, but in many Muslim cultures, puberty is the dividing line. In private, and in the presence of close relatives, rules on dress relax. However, in the presence of the husband, most scholars stress the importance of mutual freedom and pleasure of the husband and wife. It has become tradition that Muslims in general, and Salafis in particular, believe the Quran demands women wear the garments known today as jilbab and khimar. However, Quran translators and commentators translate the Arabic into English words with a general meaning, such as veils, head coverings and shawls. Embody argues that verses teach etiquette for male and female interactions, where khimar is mentioned in reference to the clothing of Arab women in the 7th century, but there is no command to actually wear them in any specific way. Hence, he considers head covering a preferable practice but not a directive of the Sharia. Contemporary practice. The styles and practices of hijab vary widely across the world. An opinion poll conducted in 2014 by the University of Michigan's Institute for Social Research asked residents of 7 Muslim-majority countries which style of women's dress they consider to be most appropriate in public. The survey found that the headscarf was chosen by the majority of respondents in Egypt, Iraq, Tunisia and Turkey. In Saudi Arabia 63% gave preference to the niqab face veil. In Pakistan the niqab, the full-length chador robe and the headscarf received about a third of the votes each, while in Lebanon half of the respondents opted for no head covering at all. According to a Pew Research Center survey, a Among the roughly 1 million Muslim women living in the U.S., 43% regularly wear headscarves, while about a half do not cover the hair. In Iran, where wearing the hijab is legally required, many women push the boundaries of the state-mandated dress code, risking a fine or a spell in detention. The Iranian President Hassan Rouhani had vowed to rein in the morality police, and the presence on the streets has decreased since he took office. But the powerful conservative forces in the country have resisted his efforts, and the dress codes are still being enforced, especially during the summer months. In Turkey, the hijab was formally banned in private and state universities and schools. The ban applied not to the scarf wrapped around the neck, traditionally worn by Anatolian peasant women, but to the head covering pinned neatly at the sides called turban in Turkey, which has been adopted by a growing number of educated urban women since the 1980s. As of mid-2000s, over 60% of Turkish women covered the head outside home, though only 11% wore the turban. The ban was lifted from universities in 2011, from government buildings in 2013, and from schools in 2014. Face veils. The burqa is the garment that covers women most completely. Either only the eyes are visible, or nothing at all. The term burqa is commonly associated with the Afghan chadri. The face-veiling portion is usually a rectangular piece of semi-transparent cloth with its top edge attached to a portion of the headscarf so that the veil hangs down, covering the face, and can be turned up if the woman wants. The niqab is another term for face veil, which is sometimes used interchangeably with burqa, but is particularly associated with the style traditionally worn in the Arabian Peninsula, where the veil is attached by one side, and covers the face only below the eyes, allowing the eyes to be seen. Only a minority of Islamic scholars believe that covering the face is mandatory, and the use of niqab beyond its traditional geographic strongholds has been a subject of political controversy. In a 2014 survey of men and women in 7 Muslim-majority countries, the Afghan burqa was the preferred form of women's dress for 11% of respondents in Saudi Arabia, 4% in Iraq, 3% in Pakistan, 2% in Lebanon, and 1% or less in Egypt, Tunisia, and Turkey. The niqab face veil was the preferred option for 63% of respondents in Saudi Arabia, 32% in Pakistan, 9% in Egypt, 8% in Iraq, and 2% or less in Lebanon, Tunisia, and Turkey.